What happens when Hollywood royalty collides with royal controversy on live television? Today we revisit one of the most electrifying moments in daytime TV. The day Angelina Jolie delivered a quiet masterclass in grace while dismantling Meghan Markle's carefully constructed narrative. The tension in the room was so thick, you could feel it through the screen. By the end, one woman walked away in stunned silence, while the other received a standing ovation. The View studio buzzed with anticipation as the theme music faded. Whoopi Goldberg sat at the center of the table, joined by Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, Alyssa Farah-Griffin, and Sunny Hostin. The energy felt charged, as though everyone could sense that something unforgettable was about to happen. "Ladies and gentlemen," Whoopi began, her voice carrying its familiar gravitas, "we have two extraordinary guests with us today. Please welcome actress, director, and humanitarian, Angelina Jolie." The audience erupted. Angelina walked onto the stage with her signature elegance, exuding calm confidence. She waved warmly before taking her seat. "And our second guest," Whoopi continued, "the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle." Meghan stepped out, smiling brightly, every detail meticulously arranged. Her outfit flawless, her hair immaculate. Yet behind the poise, there was something calculated, a flicker of ambition that suggested an agenda beyond mere promotion. The contrast was instant. Angelina sat naturally, serene and fully present. Meghan, by comparison, seemed almost rehearsed. Posture perfect, every movement deliberate. "So wonderful to have you both here." Joy Behar began enthusiastically. "Angelina, you're promoting your new film about refugee advocacy. And Meghan, your upcoming Netflix documentary. Two very different projects, but both centered on social impact." "Thank you," Angelina replied gracefully. "This film means a great deal to me. I've spent years working with refugees and wanted to give voice to their resilience, to the strength that endures even after losing everything." Sarah Haynes nodded. "Your work with the UN has been extraordinary." Angelina smiled softly. "The people I meet in these camps have taught me more about courage than any role ever could." Meghan leaned forward slightly, seizing her moment. "I completely relate to that passion. My own humanitarian journey has shown me how isolating it can be when you're trying to make change but constantly face criticism. And there it was. Even during Angelina's spotlight, Meghan subtly redirected the conversation toward herself. The hosts exchanged glances. The shift in tone was unmistakable. Sunny Hostin, ever the professional, stepped in gently. "Both of you have used your platforms for meaningful causes. Meghan, could you tell us more about your series?" Meghan smiled, settling back with satisfaction. "It's about authenticity, breaking free from systems that silence women, especially women of color. So many of us feel trapped by institutions that appear supportive publicly, but tear you down privately." The air thickened. Everyone knew which institution she meant. The implication was unmistakable. Alyssa Farah-Griffin, sharp and composed, pivoted. "That's a powerful message. Angelina, have you faced similar institutional barriers in your work?" Angelina's reply was calm, but deliberate. "Change begins when you focus on the mission, not the obstacles. The refugees I work with don't have institutional support. They create their own strength. Real service doesn't need a spotlight." It was subtle, but the message landed. A quiet contrast between genuine purpose and performance. Meghan's smile faltered just slightly. "Of course," she said smoothly. "But I think it's important to acknowledge that some of us are fighting battles on multiple fronts." And with that, the tension reached a breaking point. Two women, two worlds, and one unforgettable television moment. "You know," Meghan began, her tone sharpening slightly, "when your character is constantly being assassinated in the press, while you're just trying to do good work, it takes a toll." "Character assassination is a strong phrase," Joy Behar interjected, her journalist instincts kicking in. Are you referring to something specific? I'm referring to a pattern, Meghan replied, slipping into her well-practiced cadence. A pattern of systematic undermining that goes far beyond normal media scrutiny. When you're trying to modernize ancient institutions while confronting racial bias, the pushback can be overwhelming. The audience sat in absolute silence, sensing that the conversation was about to turn. Whoopi, ever the steady moderator, tried to redirect. Let's talk about your current projects. Angelina, your film premieres next month, right? Yes, Angelina said calmly. And I hope it inspires people to support refugee resettlement efforts in their own communities. Real change happens when ordinary people decide to get involved. Her words were simple, but they carried weight, an unspoken contrast between action and self-promotion. Meghan shifted in her seat, visibly uncomfortable. Her attempts to recenter the conversation on her own struggles weren't landing the way they usually did. You know what? Meghan said suddenly, her voice taking on an edge. It's easy to talk about grassroots change when you haven't faced the kind of institutional racism and silencing that I have. Not everyone has the privilege of being universally adored by the media. The jab was unmistakable. The room froze. Angelina remained composed, though there was a quiet steel in her expression now. I'm sorry, she said evenly. Are you suggesting that my humanitarian work has been easy because of how I'm treated by the media? I'm suggesting, Meghan replied, doubling down, that some of us have had to fight harder to have our voices heard. When palace insiders brief against you, tabloids twist your words, and even family refuses to defend you. It's a very different kind of challenge, Sraf. Haynes shifted uncomfortably. Those are serious claims about your time in the royal family. They're not claims, Meghan said firmly. They're facts. There's a big difference between someone who chooses her causes and someone who's punished for speaking out about mental health, racism, and human dignity. It was a bold accusation, one that implied Angelina's decades of humanitarian work carried less moral weight because she hadn't endured Meghan's kind of scrutiny. Whoopi opened her mouth to intervene, but Angelina gently lifted her hand. It's all right, Whoopi, she said softly. I think this is an important conversation. Then, turning to Meghan directly, she continued, her tone still calm but resonant with conviction. For over 20 years, I've worked in refugee camps and war zones. I've held dying children. I've sat with mothers who've watched their families torn apart. I've been criticized, misjudged, and even threatened. But never once have I made my personal pain the focus when speaking about theirs. The studio was utterly silent. Even the cameras seemed to lean closer. The people I work with, she went on, don't have documentaries or royal titles. They don't get to sit on TV and demand sympathy. They have nothing except resilience, and the hope that someone will care enough to help them rebuild. Meghan's face paled. I think you're misunderstanding me, she said quickly. I never said your work wasn't meaningful. I just meant that different people face different kinds of obstacles, and some of us have had to overcome more. Angelina's expression softened, but her words landed with quiet force. More obstacles. Do you mean the kind faced by a mother who's walked hundreds of miles with her children through a war zone? Or the kind where you're born into privilege but still have a platform to speak freely? Joy Behar, usually unflappable, sat speechless. The entire studio felt frozen in a single electric moment. Two powerful women, two vastly different worlds, and one unforgettable confrontation that would dominate headlines for weeks to come. Talking about institutional racism within powerful families, about being gaslit and isolated. It changes a person, Meghan said, her voice trembling slightly but still deliberate. Isolated? Angelina repeated gently, her calm composure unwavering. In a palace staffed by hundreds, with access to world-class healthcare, education, and a global platform. The audience stirred, sensing the shift. Sonny Hostin quickly stepped in. I think what Meghan is trying to express is that even with privilege, there can still be unique challenges, especially involving race and family dynamics. Of course, Angelina agreed immediately. Those challenges are real and they do matter. But when you're sitting on national television discussing humanitarian work, maybe the focus should be on the people who actually need help, not on how difficult it's been for you to help them. The studio went still. The comment landed like a quiet thunderclap. Meghan blinked, her composure cracking. I can't believe you just said that, she managed. You have no idea what I've been through. What it's like to have an entire institution turn on you. To have your own family participate in smear campaigns. To be driven to the edge because of the pressure. You're right, Angelina said softly, not flinching. I don't know what that's like. But I do know what it's like to meet mothers in refugee camps who can't feed their babies because they're too malnourished. I know what it's like to hold children who've lost everything. To sit with young girls rescued from trafficking. To speak with survivors of genocide who still wake up screaming every night. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The simplicity of her words was devastating. Alyssa Farah Griffin broke the silence. Angelina, how do you stay focused on the work with all those emotional challenges? You remember why you started? Angelina said, her gaze never leaving Meghan. You remember that your personal pain, no matter how real, doesn't compare to the suffering of people who have no platform, no voice, no choice. You use whatever privilege you have to serve others, not yourself. Meghan's face was flushed now. So what, you're saying my pain doesn't matter? That speaking out about racism and mental health is selfish? I'm saying, Angelina replied evenly, that when the conversation is about humanitarian work, it should be centered on those who need help, not how hard it's been for you to help them. Real service means putting others before your own narrative. The audience was spellbound. This wasn't just an argument. It was a clash of perspectives, of privilege versus purpose. Whoopi tried to mediate. Ladies, I think we can all agree everyone here is passionate about important causes. But Meghan cut in. I think it's incredibly privileged to suggest someone shouldn't share their own struggles. My story matters because it shows women, especially women of color, that they don't have to stay silent in the face of injustice. Your story absolutely matters, Angelina said gently, surprising everyone. But so do the stories of the people you're speaking for. And right now, in this entire discussion about humanitarian work, we've spent 15 minutes talking about your struggles, and about 2 minutes talking about theirs. The air in the room shifted. Even the panel looked taken aback by the precision of the point. That's not fair, Meghan protested weakly. You're implying I don't care about the people I'm trying to help. Am I? Angelina asked quietly. Because in the last 20 minutes, you've mentioned yourself 15 times, and the people your documentary is about, twice. Once in passing, and once to connect it back to your own experience. Sarah Haynes glanced down at her notes, silently counting. A small nod confirmed the math. Context matters, Meghan insisted, her voice rising. People need to understand what I've overcome to appreciate the work I'm doing now. Do they? Angelina leaned forward slightly. When I make a film about refugees, do I spend most of the interview talking about how hard it was to get funding, or how the media judged me? Or do I talk about the people, the survivors, and their courage? No one answered. Everyone already knew. Meghan opened her mouth again, but this time, no words came. The silence that followed was thick, not uncomfortable, but final. For once, the view had gone completely quiet. You're absolutely right, Angelina said calmly, meeting Meghan's eyes. I don't know what it's like to grow up inside the royal family, but I do know the pressure of being a single mother trying to protect her children while working in dangerous places. I know the scrutiny of having every relationship, every adoption, every parenting decision analyzed and judged. I know what it's like to have my mental health questioned, my motives dissected, my entire life reduced to headlines for over 20 years. The studio fell silent. Even Whoopi hesitated to cut in. But here's the difference, Angelina continued, her voice steady and controlled. I learned early on that my personal pain, no matter how real, is not the story. When I'm advocating for people who are fighting simply to survive, the story is them. Always them. Meghan's composure cracked, her cheeks flushed. So you think I should just stay silent about institutional racism? About the mental health crisis I went through? I think, Angelina said, pausing deliberately, that there's a time for personal testimony and a time for selfless advocacy. And true advocates know the difference. Joy Behar leaned forward. That's a strong statement, Angelina. Are you saying personal experience shouldn't inform advocacy? Not at all, Angelina replied without hesitation. Personal experience should inform advocacy. The question is, are you using your experience to serve others, or using other people's suffering to serve your own narrative? The words landed like a hammer wrapped in silk. Meghan looked stunned, as if the air had been knocked out of her. I came here to talk about important issues, she said, her voice trembling, and instead, I'm being attacked for sharing my story. No one's attacking you, Sunny Hostin said softly, trying to ease the tension. This is just an intense discussion about how advocacy is defined. Angelina wasn't finished. Then let's define it, Meghan. Without mentioning your own story, can you tell us why people should care about your documentary? What issues does it actually address? How does it help the communities you're highlighting? The question lingered in the air like a challenge. Meghan faltered. It's about empowering women to speak their truth in the face of institutional oppression. Which institutions? Angelina asked gently but firmly. What specific forms of oppression? What communities are being helped? What resources are being provided? What measurable outcomes are you aiming for? Each question drew Meghan further into silence. The audience could feel it, the unraveling. I don't think I should have to defend my humanitarian work to someone who's minimizing my experience, Meghan finally said, her tone sharp and defensive. I'm not minimizing it, Angelina replied evenly. I'm asking you to separate sharing your experience to help others from using others' struggles to validate your own. The distinction was so clear, so undeniable that even Meghan seemed to grasp the truth in it. Alyssa Farah Griffin turned to the audience. What we're seeing here, she said carefully, is a really important discussion about the difference between advocacy and autobiography. Exactly, Angelina said, turning toward the camera. When we have platforms and privilege, we have a choice. We can use them to amplify the unheard, or we can use others' pain to amplify ourselves. Meghan sat silent, realizing that every argument she'd made had just been dismantled with precision and poise. Whoopi, sensing the moment had reached its natural end, stepped in. Well, she said with a wry smile, this has definitely been an enlightening discussion about the responsibility that comes with a public platform. It has, Angelina agreed, then turned to Meghan one last time. And I truly hope your documentary helps the people it's meant to, because in the end, that's what really matters. The comment was gracious on the surface, but the subtext was unmistakable. A quiet challenge, wrapped in dignity. As the cameras prepared to cut to commercial, the audience erupted in applause. But it wasn't for both women. The ovation belonged to Angelina, who had just delivered a masterclass in grace under fire while exposing the fine line between purpose and performance. Meghan managed a faint smile and whispered, "Thank you." But her eyes told another story. the realization that her carefully crafted moment had completely backfired. Throughout the entire exchange, the studio air seemed to vibrate with unspoken tension. In under 30 minutes, one of Hollywood's most respected humanitarians had quietly, methodically, and completely dismantled one of the world's most polished self-narratives, all without raising her voice or compromising her integrity. It was a moment destined to be replayed, dissected and remembered, not as a clash of egos, but as the day authentic service triumphed over performative victimhood on live television. So what did you think of this extraordinary moment? Did Angelina Jolie strike the perfect balance between grace and truth? Or should she have handled it with more restraint? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful moments that reveal what really happens when the cameras start rolling.